Hello, and welcome back to our second Snapshot video. Last week's Snapshot was big, with Mojang dropping all of its brand new features on us all at once. We were given camels, chiseled bookshelves, hanging signs, and even a brand new bamboo wood type. But this week's Snapshot is far less dense. We have some minor changes to the camel, some changes to the fence gates, and several changes to the creative inventory. So let's jump right into it. So let's start with the camel. They've really packed this animal with several unique animations that set it apart from many of the other mobs in this game. From the way it sits, stands, moves its head, and walks. And previously, the camel walked in much the same way that horses, llamas, cows, and all other four-legged animals in the game do, by lifting their front right leg and back left leg simultaneously, and then alternating. But as many people have pointed out, camels in real life don't actually walk this way. Instead, they walk by lifting both legs on one side at the same time, both right legs, and then both left. And it appears that Mojang was paying attention to player feedback, because in this week's Snapshot, they have tweaked the camel's walk cycle animation to account for this. And I gotta say, it looks pretty good. I can imagine it was a fairly easy change to make, just switching a bit of code around to make the legs move at different times, so I'm glad to see that the devs are implementing quick changes like this when they're able to. I'm still crossing my fingers that we'll get a bit of storage added to them, and I've also seen a lot of really great feedback from the community that would make great additions to these creatures. Like being able to equip them with carpets the same way we can do with llamas to give them a bit more character and personality. Or how it would be neat if camels could stop near water sources to drink from them, which I personally would love to see with other mobs as well. I've seen a lot of great feedback out there, and who knows, maybe we'll see some more changes to the camel in the future. Alright, so apparently they also made some minor changes to fence gates? According to the Snapshot article, fence gates no longer provide center support beneath them. And according to a bug that was reported, I believe that is related to hanging signs being connected weirdly to the bottom of fence gates. Basically, the ability we have now to attach hanging signs to fence posts was also something you could do with gates. And I can't really showcase that here, but I can imagine that would have looked really odd, so it's good to know they've removed that from the game. Okay, so the majority of the changes to this week's Snapshot, though, involve another round of tweaks to the creative inventory. This again is due to lots of feedback that they received from the community after last week's changes. And from the looks of it, the devs have really been at work here. The inventory has been completely reworked. As mentioned in the previous Snapshot, many of the tabs themselves have been completely renamed, removed, or collapsed into others, with several items now being found in more than one location, which is brilliant because it means they're not constrained by where they have to put an item if it makes sense in more than one location. And of course, within each tab, blocks are now ordered by their material. So for example, if you needed a bunch of spruce wood for a build, all of its variants will now be together, whereas before they would have been completely spread out. And this for me personally is going to do wonders for my workflow, because normally when I'm working on a project, I tend to need access to all the variants of a specific block type all at once to see what my options are. So it's nice that I can now do that all in one place as opposed to constantly relying on the search tab to find the items that I need. Now, in this week's Snapshot, they've taken tons of player feedback and made even more changes to the inventory. For starters, they actually changed the icons of each of the tabs with more iconic visuals and shows items that are color-coded much better so that each tab stands out pretty nicely. I quite like it. They also renamed the Nature Blocks tab to Natural Blocks, and after a lot of feedback from the community, reorganized the tab so that all the dirt and stone blocks are now at the top, since those tend to be used more often. And then below these blocks, they actually reordered many of the plants, for example, grouping together climbable plants like the weeping vines and the twisting vines with regular vines so that they're all together. They also added nether wart to the tab, and they moved the nether rack next to the nylium block since they go together, which is really nice. They also fixed the order of the coral blocks so that they're now consistent with corals and coral fans. Apparently they used to be in a weird order that didn't really make much sense, and they also have the blocks next to the corals and fans now so that they're all in one place, which again is really nice. Over in the building blocks tab, the basalt blocks can now be found next to the blackstone, coming after the nether bricks, which feels right to me. Those blocks fit well together. The quartz have also been reordered so that the smooth quartz are now grouped together after the regular quartz variants. And they fixed the order of the copper blocks so that each type of copper is actually grouped together pretty nicely, with all of the waxed variants grouped separately. And I gotta say, I like this. It's so much easier now to find the copper you're looking for than it used to be. In the Functional Blocks tab, they moved all of the signs up higher in the inventory so that we can find them quicker since they're used so often by players, and of course because the hanging signs have brought new life to these items. And they also added a number of additional items to this section, including the Ominous Banner, the Dragon Egg, the Lectern, lightning rod, and the note block. In the redstone blocks tab, normal rails are now found directly before the special rails, which makes perfect sense. And they added the boat with chest, the bell, the big drip leaf, both of the redstone ores, and the chiseled bookshelves to this section as well. They even added white wool next to the skulk sensors since they're often used to block vibrations from those sensors. And in the same manner, they added string next to the tripwire hook, which I think is a nice touch. Bone meal was added to the tools and utilities tab, fair enough. And both TNT and the end crystal were added to the combat tab, which is pretty interesting because that means Mojang is acknowledging that the end crystal is a viable combat option. And I can say from personal experience, they're not wrong. They also reordered the tools and weapons so that the golden tools and weapons are now in logical order, I guess? This one is a little less clear to me though. In the consumables tab, water bottles, mundane, thick, and awkward potions, and tipped arrows are now present, which I believe was a bug. And they added the milk bucket. Snowballs were added to the crafting tab. And then this is actually a really cool one. They reordered all of the colored blocks in the game by their color gradients. So for items like your wool, your terracotta, candles, banners, stained glass, etc., these will now be arranged by the color spectrum that we're all familiar with, which is a really nice touch. And finally, in the spawn eggs tab, the colors of the camel spawn egg have been updated. Looks very nice. And, this is a big one, spawners are now found for the very first time in Java Edition's creative inventory. So we no longer have to use the give command to access these items. That's awesome. So now if you want to add these to one of your builds in creative mode, you can easily access the spawner from the creative inventory. All you have to do is place one down. By default, it will be a pig spawner. Pick a spawn egg of your choice, right click on the spawner with that egg, and now you have a functional spawner for any mob in the game. That's really neat. And of course we had this ability before, we just had to use commands to do it, which honestly not all players are comfortable with or even know how to do, so this is a really great change. Also, I did forget to mention this in last week's snapshot, but the search tab now lists all the items in the creative inventory sequentially, grouped by all of the tabs. So for example, items found in the building blocks tab would appear before items in the functional blocks tab because it's the first tab in our inventory, which means you can still use the search tab to find blocks very organically if you wanted to. Overall though, I've been playing around with the creative inventory for a while now, and the experience of finding the blocks and items that I need is now significantly easier. Okay, so there are also some changes to the chat reporting screen and some changes to player reports as well, adding the ability to keep player reports temporarily as a draft. And you can read more about these details on the official Snapshot page. And of course, there are several technical changes and even more bug fixes which are always nice to see, including a bunch of bug fixes to shields which were apparently not blocking explosion damage from end crystals, gassed fireballs, beds, and respawn anchors. They also fixed some bugs with signs, including an issue where the acacia and birch hanging signs were not able to be crafted, which is something I also noticed last week. The line spacing on hanging signs was too small as well, causing some characters to overlap, so they fixed that. Still waiting on them to fix that character limit though. And they also fixed a bug that was preventing mobs from pathfinding on top of the posts of hanging signs. So mobs should be able to walk across them now, which may actually be very useful for creative builds. I can't wait to see how that gets used. And finally, there was also a really awkward bug where if a camel was sitting when you exited the game, then when you reloaded the world, it would replay the sitting animation again, which was really strange, so I'm glad they fixed that. And that is gonna do it. That is all there is in this week's 22w43a snapshot. It wasn't a big one like last week's, but it's always nice to tune in every week to see what quality of life changes have been made to this game, and to see how Mojang is implementing our feedback into this update. If you would like to provide your own feedback to Mojang, you can do that very easily on the Minecraft feedback website, which I'll include in the description. If you've never been to this page, you really should check it out. It's a great place to share your ideas and your feedback with Mojang and the rest of the Minecraft community. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this week's snapshot. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. That would really help me get this channel off of the ground and would make it so that you don't miss the details of future snapshots. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.